The world's most studied, most debated relic is once again at the center of a storm. For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has drawn scientists, skeptics, and believers into a battle of faith and evidence. Some call it the greatest fraud in history. Others believe it is the single most important artifact humanity has ever held. And now, a shocking new discovery etched into the very fibers of the cloth may prove what billions have believed for 2,000 years, that Jesus Christ truly rose from the dead. But that's just the beginning. What we're about to uncover goes deeper than any previous investigation. New quantum analysis, AI-powered image reconstruction, and electromagnetic field studies are revealing details so precise, so impossible to fake, that even hardened skeptics are questioning everything they thought they knew. Hit like and subscribe button and stay locked in, because the deeper we go, the stranger and more undeniable this relic becomes. The Shroud of Turin. A length of linen nearly 14 feet long, bearing the faint yet unmistakable image of a crucified man. No paint, no brushstrokes. Just a mysterious imprint that even the most advanced imaging technology can't replicate. But here's what most people don't know. This isn't just any ordinary cloth. The linen itself defies conventional understanding. Microscopic analysis reveals fibers so old, so unique in their composition that textile experts can't find anything comparable in the modern world. The weave pattern, a 3/1 herringbone twill, was extremely expensive in the ancient world. Only the wealthy could afford such burial cloth. Yet the man wrapped within shows every sign of brutal execution reserved for the lowest criminals. A contradiction that haunts researchers to this day. In 1988, the world thought the case was closed. Carbon dating from 3 separate labs declared the shroud a medieval fake from the 1200s or 1300s. Newspapers ran with the headline, "Forgery Confirmed." But here's the twist. Decades later, it turned out the samples tested may not have even been from the original cloth. Instead, they likely came from a patch added after a devastating fire. In other words, the testing could have been fatally flawed from the very start. Later, analysis revealed something explosive. The tested threads contained vanillin and other chemicals completely absent from the main body of the shroud. They weren't original fibers at all. And as research continued, new evidence began piling up, each discovery stranger than the last. But the latest one, a hidden inscription, invisible to the naked eye, tucked near the face of the figure, could be the most important of all, because it contains a name, and that name changes everything. What the public doesn't know is that the Vatican has been conducting its own classified investigations for decades. Secret commissions of scientists, physicists, chemists, medical doctors, and forensic experts studied the shroud behind closed doors. Their findings, locked away in Vatican archives for nearly 40 years, paint a picture that would shock the world. Blood analysis revealed not just human blood, but blood of the rare AB type, the same type found on the Sudarium of Oviedo, another relic claimed to have covered Jesus' face. But it gets stranger. Spectroscopic analysis detected traces of bilirubin in the blood, a chemical that appears only under extreme physical stress and torture. The concentration levels were so high that medical experts concluded the victim had undergone prolonged, agonizing suffering. Even more disturbing, the blood patterns show clear signs of separation between arterial and venous blood, indicating the victim was alive when most wounds were inflicted, but dead when the final spear wound was made. This matches the Gospel account with surgical precision. If the shroud is real, then it may be the very cloth described in the Gospel of John. The burial cloths left behind in the tomb after Jesus rose. For centuries, this possibility lingered in whispers, but history itself complicates things. The earliest possible reference comes from the 6th century, the mysterious image of Edessa, a miraculous cloth bearing Christ's face that vanished during the Crusades. Could this have been the shroud, folded to show only the face? Byzantine artwork from that era shows striking similarities to the shroud's image. The same asymmetrical features, the same long hair, even the same unusual forked beard that appears on no other depictions of Christ from that period. The shroud's first public appearance wasn't until 1355, when a French knight displayed it in a small church. Almost immediately, the local bishop cried foul, calling it a painted forgery. Even the Vatican seemed unsure, keeping its distance, but this French knight wasn't just any knight. He was one of the founding members of the Knights Templar, an order that had spent 2 centuries in the Holy Land. Did they discover the shroud in some forgotten tomb or monastery? The Templars were notorious for guarding their secrets that died with them when the order was destroyed. Yet, somehow, despite official doubts, the shroud only grew in influence. By 1986, the Vatican formally took possession of it, locking it away in Turin's Cathedral of San Giovanni Battista, guarded as both a relic and a mystery. The Church never declared it authentic, but they also never condemned it as fake. Why? Because despite centuries of criticism, no one could explain how the image was formed. One event looms large over the shroud's history: the fire of 1532. Flames engulfed the chapel in Chambéry where it was kept, leaving burn holes, water stains, and patches. The shroud barely survived. Eyewitness accounts describe something extraordinary. As the silver reliquary containing the shroud began to melt, the cloth inside should have been incinerated. Instead, it emerged scorched but largely intact, as if protected by some unseen force. But here's the catch. Those repairs may have changed everything. Modern researchers argue that the carbon-14 tests in 1988 unknowingly sampled threads from the repaired areas, not the original cloth. If true, the entire forgery verdict collapses instantly. New analysis using accelerator mass spectrometry has revealed that the repair threads contain cotton fibers, completely absent from the original linen. Medieval nuns had essentially invisibly rewoven damaged sections, creating a textile hybrid that would fool carbon dating for centuries. Since 1578, the shroud has rested in Turin. Millions have seen it with their own eyes during rare public exhibitions. Yet no laboratory, no artist, no experiment has ever been able to recreate the faint, 3D-like image of the man it depicts. Science can measure it, analyze it, scan it, but it cannot explain it. One researcher spent over 20 years trying to solve this mystery. A physician approached the shroud not as a relic, but as a patient. He studied the anatomy, posture, and even the fall of the hair on the figure. What he found shook him. The man on the shroud doesn't look like someone lying flat on a slab. Instead, the posture suggests the body was upright. The hair flows downward both on the front and the back of the head, impossible for someone lying down. The experiments went further. Using cadavers, volunteers, and detailed measurements to recreate burial positions. Every test confirmed the shocking conclusion. The body that created this image wasn't resting. It was suspended in space. But even more intriguing were findings about rigor mortis. The limbs show partial rigidity, exactly what you'd expect 30 to 36 hours after death. The gospel timeline fits perfectly. Crucifixion on Friday afternoon, burial before sundown, resurrection on Sunday morning. To test it, volunteers were placed on glass tables and results compared. The difference was stark. The man of the shroud wasn't resting. He was suspended. The medical evidence doesn't stop there. Medical examiners identified over 100 distinct wounds on the body. each one consistent with Roman execution methods, not medieval artistic interpretation. To believers, this detail echoes resurrection. The body not collapsing, but rising, weightless, as if gravity itself had lost its hold. Recent laser experiments sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Using the most powerful excimer laser available, researchers attempted to recreate the shroud's image characteristics. The results were staggering. To create even a small section matching the shroud's properties would require ultraviolet laser pulses generating 34 billion watts, more power than all the electrical plants in the world combined. And even then, the image would only penetrate 0.2 micrometers into the linen fibers. The shroud's image is exactly that depth, impossibly precise for any known medieval process. The conclusion was reluctant but undeniable. The power required to create the entire shroud image exceeds the capabilities of any technology, ancient or modern. Quantum physicists have argued that the image shows characteristics of what they call event horizons, the boundary around black holes where space-time itself breaks down. Could resurrection involve similar quantum effects, momentarily suspending natural laws? The clues don't stop with posture and physics. Microscopic particles embedded in the cloth tell their own story. Geologists discovered traces of a very specific limestone dust on the shroud. Not just any dust, but Jerusalem limestone, chemically identical to samples found near the Damascus Gate and Golgotha, the very sites tied to Jesus' crucifixion. The dirt wasn't random. It was concentrated around the knees, the nose, and the shoulders, exactly where a man would collect soil if he fell while carrying a cross. Blood mixed with dirt on the face suggests impact against the ground. But botanists made an even more specific discovery. Imprints of flowers and leaves pressed into the cloth around the head area, not just any plants, but varieties that bloom only in the Jerusalem area during March and April. One species was used to make crowns in ancient Palestine. Its thorny stems match perfectly with the head wounds on the shroud. Another grows only within a few miles of Jerusalem. It's as if the linen itself carried the last journey of Christ in microscopic detail, from the flora of his homeland to the dust of his final path. The image also bears wounds that match Roman crucifixion methods, not medieval art. For centuries, painters depicted nails driven through Jesus' palms, but the shroud shows puncture marks in the wrists, the only spot strong enough to hold a man's body weight on a cross. Gruesome experiments on cadavers tested this. Nails through the palms tore through flesh within minutes, but nails through the space of daistote, a gap between wrist bones, could support an entire body's weight. The shroud shows exactly this wound pattern, in anatomical detail that wouldn't be understood until the 20th century. A square-shaped wrist wound, 1 centimeter across, matches a Roman nail preserved in a relic in Rome. The side wound measures 2 inches, aligning perfectly with the width of a Roman spear. Forensic pathologists examined the scourge marks and counted over 120 individual strikes. The pattern shows 2 different whips, each with multiple leather thongs tipped with bone and metal, exactly matching the Roman flagrum. The wounds aren't random. They follow anatomical logic. Deeper, where flesh is thicker, lighter over bone. Whoever created this understood human anatomy at the level of a modern medical examiner. Even the blood tells a story. Modern analysis revealed clear separation of red blood cells in serum, a sign of trauma that occurs after death. This echoes the Gospel of John. When Jesus' side was pierced, blood and water poured out. Recent analysis has identified the presence of creatinine and ferritin in the blood, chemicals that appear in extremely high concentrations during severe dehydration and trauma. The blood chemistry itself tells the story of crucifixion. Art can imitate, but trauma encoded in fibers, down to the molecular level, that's not art, that's history. Artificial intelligence entered the Shroud investigation in a revolutionary way. Deep learning algorithms, trained on thousands of ancient textile samples, analyzed the shroud's weave pattern, fiber density, and aging characteristics. The AI conclusion: the cloth shows aging patterns consistent with 2,000-year-old Middle Eastern linen, not medieval European flax. The algorithm identified microscopic details that human eyes missed, subtle variations in thread tension, natural discoloration patterns, and fiber deterioration that can't be artificially replicated. But the most shocking discovery came from AI image analysis. By removing centuries of dirt, smoke damage, and handling wear, researchers reconstructed what the shroud would have looked like when it was new. The result was breathtaking: a photographic quality image of a man's face, so detailed that facial recognition software could identify individual features. The resolution rivals modern digital photography, impossible with any pre-modern technique. Under the microscope, researchers uncovered pollen, 49 distinct types. Of those, 33 grow only in the Middle East. 3 are unique to the Jerusalem area. And their blooming season? Spring. The very season of Passover and crucifixion. Decades of studying these pollen grains traced the shroud's journey, pollen from Turkey, France, and Italy, exactly matching the historical path from Jerusalem to Constantinople to Western Europe. Then there are the coins. Faint circular shapes over the eyes match coins minted under Pontius Pilate between 29 and 33 AD. Using computer enhancement, researchers identified Greek letters spelling Tiberu Kaiseros, Tiberius Caesar, exactly as they appear on surviving specimens. Jewish burial customs sometimes included placing coins over the eyes, making this detail chillingly specific. But here's the kicker: these particular coins were in circulation for only 4 years, the exact window when Jesus was crucified. Digital reconstruction has revealed additional details. The right coin shows a shepherd's staff, symbol of authority. The left coin bears what appears to be a ceremonial wand. Both symbols appear on authentic Pilate coins in museums worldwide. Even the cloth size itself is precise: 2 by 8 cubits, the exact measurement of first-century Jewish burial shrouds. Whoever the man was, he was buried exactly as a wealthy Jew of that time would have been. On the edges of the shroud lies another overlooked detail: stitching. A 3-inch side strip was attached with a style of seam found only in first-century Palestine. Textile archaeologists who have examined ancient fabrics from Masada and Qumran confirmed that this particular technique was completely unknown in medieval Europe. The seam uses a specific left-to-right stitch pattern found exclusively in first-century Jewish textiles. Here's why that matters. This particular sewing technique was completely unknown in medieval Europe. A forger in the 1300s couldn't have copied what he didn't know existed. Thread analysis reveals another impossibility for medieval forgers. The linen fibers contain microscopic traces of cotton, not European cotton, but Middle Eastern varieties that grew only in specific regions of ancient Palestine. Combine that with the wounds, the anatomy, and the burial customs, everything lines up not with the Middle Ages, but with first-century Judea. The convergence of evidence is staggering. A medieval artist would have needed knowledge of Roman crucifixion techniques, first-century Jewish burial customs, Palestinian botany, Jerusalem geology, and textile methods that wouldn't be discovered until the 21st century. Researchers made a discovery that defied all expectations. The shroud exhibits unusual electromagnetic properties. When subjected to various wavelengths of light, the image becomes more or less visible, almost as if it were photographed using radiation rather than visible light. University teams used corona discharge imaging, a technique that detects electromagnetic fields around objects. The results were unprecedented. The shroud shows electrical activity patterns completely unlike any known artwork. The image appears to have been created by some form of electromagnetic radiation emanating from within the cloth, as if the body itself had become a source of energy at the moment the impression was formed. Even more intriguing, NASA scientists have noted similarities between the shroud's image properties and photographs taken during space missions, where cosmic radiation creates similar effects on photographic equipment. Could resurrection involve energy patterns that modern physics is only beginning to understand? But then comes perhaps the most astonishing twist. Researchers studying the shroud under high-resolution imaging noticed something no one expected: movement. The image isn't static. Subtle differences in limb positions suggest the body shifted, almost like frames of a film. The changes resemble stroboscopic photography, where multiple stages of motion are captured in a single exposure. Computer analysis has identified at least 17 different frames showing progressive movement, a body not lying still, but in the process of rising. The arms show multiple positions, as if captured during the act of getting up. Could it be that the shroud somehow recorded the very instant of resurrection? That the flash of energy as life returned etched itself into the cloth like radiation burning a photographic plate? Researchers theorized that if a body dematerialized, passing from physical to spiritual existence, it might release precisely this type of energy burst, creating a photographic negative in the surrounding cloth. Science can't explain it, but the evidence is there: a body breathing, moving, rising. And now, the newest discovery, the one sending shockwaves through both scientific and religious circles. Advanced imaging revealed faint letters near the face, written in both Latin and Greek. Using multispectral imaging and computer enhancement, researchers have identified multiple words: Jesus, Nazarene, and what appears to be son of in ancient Greek script. The letters aren't painted or drawn, they're impressed into the fibers themselves. One word stood out: Nazarene. A burial tag, perhaps, placed over the body and somehow imprinted onto the fibers. And the script, consistent with first-century styles from the Middle East, utterly unlike medieval handwriting. Vatican researchers confirmed that the lettering style matches exactly with inscriptions found on ossuaries from first-century Jerusalem. The spacing, the letter formation, even the abbreviations follow protocols used exclusively by Jewish scribes of that period. Even skeptics admit no medieval artist would risk leaving out the title Christ or Son of God. Calling him only Nazarene would have been heretical. Yet that is exactly what you'd expect in a real burial: an identifier, not a proclamation. The inscription also contains what appears to be a date, markings that could correspond to the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar's reign, exactly when historical records place Jesus' crucifixion. This is why the shroud matters, because if real, it is more than fabric, it is more than history. It is the only physical witness to the single event that defines Christianity: the resurrection. Without it, Jesus was a prophet who died. With it, he is the Son of God who conquered death. The Gospels may differ in detail, but they agree on one truth: the tomb was empty. Women found the stone rolled away. Disciples touched his hands. Hundreds saw him alive. Modern skeptics have proposed every explanation imaginable: theft of the body, mass hallucination, mythological evolution over time. But none of these theories can account for physical evidence embedded in ancient linen. The shroud doesn't just corroborate the gospel accounts, it provides details the gospels don't mention. The exact nature of Jesus' wounds, the specific methods of his torture, the precise moment of his death, and now, perhaps, the shroud is adding its silent testimony, not a painting, not a forgery, but an ancient witness to the moment humanity changed forever. Because if this cloth is real, then the resurrection is not just faith, it's fact. The implications are staggering. If Jesus truly rose from the dead, then his claims about divinity, salvation, and eternal life aren't philosophical concepts, they're historical realities. The shroud becomes not just archaeological evidence, but proof that death itself has been conquered. For believers, it confirms everything they've hoped for. For skeptics, it demands a choice: reject the evidence, or accept that the most fundamental questions about human existence may have been answered 2,000 years ago. The Shroud of Turin remains humanity's greatest mystery. But with each new discovery, that mystery points toward the same extraordinary truth. Christ is risen. And the proof has been hanging in a cathedral in Italy, waiting for science to catch up with faith. The question now isn't whether the shroud is authentic. The question is whether we're ready to accept what it's been trying to tell us all along.